10:45. About a couple of weeks after VJ Day, I get a call from John Huston. Marty, I'm going up to Chicago for a couple of weeks with Bogey and Lauren, and we're taking the Super Chief, and I'd like you and Beverly to tag along with us. Now, for you younger folks, the Super Chief was a cross-country train that ran from Los Angeles to Chicago in under 2 days. It had dining cars, private bedrooms, and was the height of elegance, and therefore way too expensive for below-the-liners such as us. So I say, John, that's very sweet of you, but unfortunately, we can't afford that. And he says, I know you can't afford it, that's why I'm paying for the tickets myself. So get packing, we leave tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. He hung up, and that was it. Now, the reason John invited us was because he had just gotten a divorce from his second wife, Leslie, and he didn't want to feel like a third wheel. Fortunately, Bogey and I had gotten along pretty well on Maltese Falcon, and soon Beverly and Lauren became thick as thieves. Lauren had just taken up knitting, and Beverly had come out of the room with 2 knitting needles in her hands. This left John plenty of free time to catch up on his reading and sketch. It was all very cordial, until Bogey pulled out the chess set. Now you have to understand that Bogey loved chess. He was a master-level player and was a tournament director for the United States Chess Federation. And I was the polar opposite. And so we play. First game, Bogey wins in 10 moves. Second game, Bogey wins in 8 moves. Third game, I'm starting to get the hang of it a little bit, and Bogey wins in 14 moves. And by now, he's getting a little steamed. You see, like most great chess players, Bogey liked to win, but he wanted to work for it. Instead, he was rolling me like a tenderloin drunk. Every time he won, he'd get angrier and angrier, and meanwhile, John's sitting back in the corner, quietly laughing his ass off at my growing discomfort. Finally, Beverly tapped me on the shoulder and said, why don't you let me take a turn, if that's okay with you, Bogey? And Bogey looks at her and says, depends. You play better than him? Now that was an honest question, but it came out of Bogey mildly sarcastic, which none of us took personally because we all knew that mildly sarcastic was Bogey's default tone. Beverly simply smiled sweetly and said, yeah, I think so. What followed was a 3-hour slugfest. It turns out that Beverly had been playing chess since childhood and was the president of her chess club at Vassar. And as she played, I found myself getting more and more aroused as she moved across the board like a brainy Valkyrie. The more she played, the more I got... Mr. Jensen, what's the modern term I'm looking for here? Thank you. Horned up. Finally, at the 200-minute mark, Bogey looked down at the board, smiled a big smile, laid down his king, and said, I resign. He then shook her hand and said, thanks for the game. Later that night, Beverly and I had the greatest sex of our married life to date. It was so vigorous that we had woken up John, who, by the way, slept through part of the Battle of St. Pedro during World War II. And the next morning, I asked Beverly if she could teach me how to play chess. Long story short, we were married for 25 years. And it would have been longer if she hadn't passed on from the cancer in 1966. Excuse me. Now, after she passed, I got a lovely note of condolence from John, who also sent along a painting he had done of the evening. He called it crossed swords on the super chief. Now, it wasn't the most flattering image of Beverly. You have to remember John was heavily influenced by the Cubists. But he caught something of his soul. And to this day, I can't look at it without bursting into tears.